Hello and welcome to another pattern recognition video. And today I'm going to go over some problems involving simplification patterns. So a lot of times in chess, you let things get too out of control and crazy with pieces flying all over the board when sometimes you just need to simplify things, especially if you can go into a one endgame. So here we have black just moving the king up here to c6, helping to guard the rook that is under attack by white's king. But white can try and figure out a way to simplify things. I mean, what would you do in this position? I'll try and do at least 10 problems here. That's usually what I've been doing lately. And pause the video at any time if you need to think longer. If not, let's see what's happening in this position with white to move. Well, it looks like we have 4 pawns versus 5, but it's white to move. Normally you want to look at checks, captures, and threats in that order. But this is about simplification, so we want to find a way that we can simplify down into a one endgame if we can. Well, checks are most forcing, so let's look at that first. If we capture this pawn with check, the king can't retreat or we'll capture the rook. So the rook would have to block. That's the only move that can be played. And then we have to look and see if we capture and the rook blocks, should we go ahead and take here? So if we take the rook and the king, recaptures, now we've gained a pawn and material is even, but we do have a pawn majority. And so maybe we can push this pawn here and try and get a passed pawn over here with our 3 versus 2 majority, and the king would have to run over here to stop that passed pawn, and that could allow us to take out this pawn, maybe go after the a pawn and then push our pawn up to promotion in the endgame. So let's see what happens here. We capture, then we go ahead and capture there, and then push the pawn here. And that's what they want, because how could the game continue? Well, if they don't go ahead and take here, we're just going to capture, and then we could start pushing this pawn. The king would have to go over and stop it. Then we would capture this. We'd have another passed pawn, and then we could grab the a pawn. So, they should go ahead and capture. But now we can recapture, and we're stopping their h pawn, but we have this passed f pawn. So we could start pushing that forward, and the king would have to deal with that. And once again, we would be able to capture the c pawn, then even knock out the a pawn and promote our a pawn. All right, next problem. The knight has jumped forward here, and so now it's not so much about simplifying into a one endgame because there are a lot more pieces here. Now we need to see if we can simplify things to maybe slow down this attack. We have a bishop lined up on our king, a knight, and a queen. If we could trade off pieces and simplify. Let's look at the material, though. If you're going to simplify down, you want to make sure that once the pieces are traded off and the dust is settled, that you still have an advantage. Well, excuse me, it looks like pawn material, or excuse me, pawns, we have, let's see here, 6 pawns versus their 7. So our opponent is ahead in material, so we have to be careful about that. And also, there's a threat here of the knight jumping in, attacking our queen and the rook at the same time. So perhaps, and like I said, take a look at this, pause at any time if you want to think longer. But if we're looking to simplify down and we want to find a way to go ahead in material if we can, because if we make even trades, well then we're just going to end up, we're just going to end up behind a pawn. So what is the best way to start simplifying and trading material? Well, this knight is pretty threatening here, threatening to attack our queen. The knight could also grab this rook and then threaten the other rook. So we probably need to knock that knight out first. So if we take the knight, if the queen just recaptures, well then we can grab the bishop here. If we capture the knight and they capture our bishop with check, well then our queen can go ahead and capture and protect our knight, and we'll be able to keep that knight. So that looks to be the way to go. Take the knight out, and now we can just capture that. And look, we're ahead a bishop for a pawn. So that is a good way to simplify things down into a one endgame. Now we are going into the endgame. All right. The knight has just jumped forward here. Our king is somewhat exposed here, especially with this queen hovering around the king's side over here. The knight is on a good outpost. The knight's attacking our bishop. So what can we do? How can we simplify things? Excuse me. All right. Well, we're ahead in material, I believe. Let's double check things. We have 7 pawns versus 5. But we have a bishop for their 2 pawns. So we're ahead. All right. So maybe to simplify down, we want to look at this threat here lined up on the queen. So maybe, and we have to be careful. We could just try and capture, and then if they recapture, we grab the queen. But we have to be careful because if we capture, they don't necessarily have to capture with that pawn. We could have a check move made first, and that's something you definitely want to be careful of. So if we take the knight, they could check us, getting the queen out of the line of fire, and our king is still in, or sorry, our queen is still in danger, and our king, of course. So, oh no. Okay, that's not possible because we will check their king and they'll be forced to take our queen. All right, so that settles things. Capture. We trade off. And now, once they capture, we will have the extra bishop. Their pawns are kind of broken up here. We could even push this pawn and our king could run over here after this. All right, let's keep this moving along. We have a queen under attack. And this looks to be similar to the last problem where if we capture, what will they do? Well, if they capture with the pawn, we can capture the queen. But what if they don't do that? What if we take they capture our queen, All right, so that's something we have to look at. And you need to keep that in mind when you're trying to solve tactical problems, that if there is more than one response possible by your opponent, you have to double check and make sure that you're not going to get in trouble. So, yeah, we probably don't want to take here because they don't have to take with the pawn. They could just go ahead and capture with the rook, and then we lose our queen. So maybe instead we grab a pawn, then we'll just be ahead in material here. So we capture with check, forking the king and the queen. So the queen would be forced to capture. We recapture. Then we can bring our other rook over here and double up. And we'll just be ahead by 3 pawns at that point, which should be enough to win. So, capture, recapture. And so now if we look at the position, we have 3 extra pawns, and we're about ready to double our rooks up, and then we can try and trade off even more material here and use all our extra pawns in the endgame. All right, well, we're almost halfway there. I hope you're enjoying these simplification problems, which, I don't see as many of these in tactical problems where they teach you how to simplify down, especially if you can simplify into a 1 endgame. All right, the rook is attacking our bishop here, which is undefended. What can we do? Well, let's see. Well, it looks like, if we just move, then they could push this pawn forward. And the bishop cannot move because the rook will be pinning the bishop to our king. So maybe we attack with our rook. If they take our rook, then we can get the bishop. And that would help us simplify things down. They would have to move the rook. So that looks good because then we could get 2 pieces for our 1 rook there. All right, here we go. So that helps us simplify things down. Now, if we look at the position, that's what you have to do. You have to figure out ahead of time what the end game position will look like and if it's going to be an advantage for you. They have 4 pawns to our 5, so we do have a good pawn majority on the queen side. We also have the bishop pair on a pretty open board, and we have 2 bishops versus 1 of their rooks, which is a little bit stronger. So we're pretty good here, and we're also forking here. So if they try to defend by moving the rook and defending the pawn, then what do we do? Well, we could try and add more pressure here maybe. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's do the final 5 problems here. Feel free to leave comments at any time if you have any questions or anything you'd like to bring up. Here we go. Problem number 6. How can we simplify things down? We are ahead by an extra pawn, this passed pawn here, and the rook is probably trying to get behind here. behind the passed pawn, which is usually a good idea, but unfortunately they've made a mistake here that will allow us to win this endgame. So see if you can figure out what you should do here with black to move, and hopefully you found the right answer, which is just bringing the rook here, forking the king and the rook, forcing a trade of rooks. And then after our king recaptures, we have this passed pawn here, and the king will not be able to stop both of those. So check and capture. And so, this passed pawn could be a threat, and the king will have to come over to stop that, and that will allow us to go after this one, this pawn, and promote ours. All right, here we go. 4 more. Okay, our queen is centralized. And this is similar to a game I played recently where my opponent could have played this move against me and they did not. All right. Now, when you're simplifying, you want to look at all the possible captures. So, we could try and capture this bishop. And then if they recapture, well, then that allows us to take this, pinning the queen to the king here. So either way, we can trade down some material. Now, also, I want to take a look at, should we do this first? If we go there, I don't know, maybe that's not as good. Queen would recapture. Oh, bishop would recapture. And then this bishop, couldn't recapture. Or else we grab this. So either way, it looks like we're simplifying down. But let's see if we can figure out if one is better than the other. Do we want to take this bishop first and bring that rook up to the 7th rank? Or do we want to go ahead and capture over here first? But that may allow... no. And as far as material, right now our opponent is ahead by a knight. A knight for a pawn. We have the 1 extra pawn. So... I don't know. This is a toss-up. Do we just take the bishop first? Or do we take this rook first? All right, I'm going to try the rook first. Nope, they don't want that. They want us to go ahead and capture here first. Then we go here. And so now, why was that move better? Well, I guess in the previous version, the rook could have ended up on our 7th rank where it could target these pawns. Whereas here, our rook is up on the 2nd rank, also ready for this rook to jump in and double up rooks, and then we could try and trade off even more. Okay, on to the next problem. We just had a capture. What should we do here? Let's look at our material. We have 6 pawns versus their 3. At the moment, they have the extra bishop, but I'm thinking we can capture, forking the king and the queen. If the king runs, then we just trade queens. All right. Is there anything better? It doesn't look like it. Looks like that's how we should go. So we capture, we're forking, then we're going to get the queen next. We just have those extra pawns. So capture. Now the rooks can be traded off. They will be able to grab this pawn here. But, that can't even be done because now we have this passed pawn that's ready to promote. So, that the rook, or excuse me, the bishop would probably have to go here and stop that, and we could still push it and then take, and we'll just be winning after that. All right. On to the final two problems. So a pawn is pushed forward, and that was a mistake. Can you figure out why? Well, that allowed us a checking opportunity and a fork as well. So once again, hopefully you found this one. Pause if you want to think about it more. But if not, we're going to go here, forking the queen and the king. So the opponent will be forced to capture. Then we recapture. And then we'll have this passed pawn over here, which will be unstoppable. So there we go. And a way to tell that this pawn is not able to be stopped, the king has to run over towards this pawn. So if the king goes this way, it's still not going to be inside the square of the pawn here. So we see this square, and if the king cannot get inside that square, well, then our pawn will be able to promote. And you can tell here, so it goes here, we go here. The king starts running over, and we just keep going. The king tries to stop us, but now we're one square away and they won't make it in time. All right, the final problem. Here we go. Rook captures, attacking our queen. What should we do here? Well, we want to simplify down. We can't capture with the pawn because of this pin to our king. So, do we give up queens here? All right. Well, I'm thinking we got to take with our queen. So if we take, what is the material like? Pawns are even. We're down by a exchange. So if we take the rook, if they take our queen, we take their queen and we're attacking their rook, so I think we're good. So capture, we go after the queen, and then they didn't want us taking their rook, but now we get the bishop, and we're just ahead by a knight here. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed those 10 problems with just simplification patterns where you just determine that after you trade down that you'll be going into a one endgame with extra material, whether it's extra pawns or like in this position, the extra knight. And that should be enough to win the game. So Hopefully, if you practice these, and I would recommend you do tactical problems and go over them once and then go over them again, because if you just solve problems once and then forget about them, you'll kind of they won't be kept in your long-term memory. If you go over a set of problems multiple times, after about 7 times, they're more likely to stay in your long-term memory. But if you just look at a tactical problem or puzzle once, you'll more than likely forget that. All right. Feel free to leave comments, like, and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you for watching and have a super chess day.